What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today I think I'm going to try to do something about this open chasm in front of the radiator on my D100 project. Keep watching and let's see what I can figure out. The other day I was kind of tinkering around here a bit in the garage, and I decided that I wanted to try to straighten out the grill on the D100. It had some dents and dings and stuff in it, so I took the grill off and I was gonna start messing with that. And then I just kind of noticed that, which I don't know why it took me this long to notice this, but I don't really like the way this area looks here. Normally on some of these D100s, there's an radiator overflow tank that normally sits right here. Actually, I happen to have gotten lucky one time at the pick apart and got my hands on one. So normally there's one of these that would sit right about here or so, but I grabbed it from the pick apart, and I don't really even like that much. I'm not really a fan of that. So before I'd gotten that, I had got my hands on an overflow bottle. So I think this is what I'm going to go with, but I still want to do something about this area here. So I think I'm going to build just a decorative plate that kind of covers up this whole area and just dresses up the front of the grill and covers this big opening right here. So the first thing I did was I grabbed some chipboard and I made a template. And here's what I came up with. So the first thing that I had to do was I kind of had to straighten this edge out along the front of the radiator support. So I did that, and then I grabbed some of this chipboard and started fitting it in place. And I made so I got some clearance holes for the bumper for the hood. There's a little bumper stud here that mounts there, and that's for the hood. And then I wanted to also be able to remove this without having to remove anything structural. So I'm gonna drill these holes out for these bolts that connect the fender to the radiator support. And then I kind of clearanced it around this overflow bottle. This is where it comes up in front of the radiator, and there's going to be a little lip that kind of bends over the edge of the radiator. And then I'm going to clearance this. This is just a rough cutout, but I have clearance for the radiator neck, for the latch mechanism. There's the bolt here for the horn. And then again, it's going to come up and around the edge of the battery. And there's the mounts for the hole locations for the two bolts that mount the fender to the radiator support. And then that's the hole for the other hood bumper on this side. Now that I've got a pattern made, I can put this on some metal and start cutting it out. So ultimately, I would prefer this panel to be made out of aluminum. Maybe some brushed aluminum I think would look really good under the hood of the truck. But I don't have any aluminum. So what I'm going to be using is some 22 gauge sheet metal that I happen to have lying around. So here I've transferred basically half the pattern over to this 22 gauge sheet metal. The other half will be going in that area there. But I'm going to use some sheet metal shears to cut out the rough pattern. I mean, those are Harbor Freight sheet metal shears. They're great for basically straight lines and real easy curves, but they'll give me the rough cutout, and then I'll be turning to the hand shears to do all the detailed cuts. So let's get it set up and we'll get the pattern cut out. right, so I've got most of the rough shape worked out for the first half of the radiator cover. I've got it clecoed in place right here. I'm gonna add a couple of mounting screws. There'll be a few others along the radiator support or the grill support. I've got 2 of the bolt holes drilled out right here. I still need to drill and punch out the 1 3/4 hole for where the hood bumper mounts. And I'll be using that, I'll be doing that with a hydraulic punch. And then I'm going to break the end over here where it goes past and then over the radiator. And then I'll trim that off for length. It's really long right now. I'll probably be taking off, once it's broke over, I'll probably take off a 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch or so. So right now I'm going to drill and punch that hole and break the edge. Now that I've got the panel pretty much roughed in and ready to go on this side, I'm ready to repeat the process for this side. That was easy. Now that I've got both panels pretty much the way that I want them, it's time to move on to the next step. And that's gonna be working with a bead roller. Now, this is kind of the whole point of this video. I've never used a bead roller. As a matter of fact, I've never even touched one, and I just got this one in the mail today. So this is what I'm going to be using. I ordered this from Jegs. I'll put a link down in the description below. So there's a few things I want to do. I mean, obviously this panel is real flimsy. It's only 22 gauge. So by adding some bead detail or some raised and lowered panel details, that'll not only stiffen the panel up, but just kind of make it look a lot better. So let me show you the first thing I'm going to be doing. So right on the corners here, both corners, there's where the fender meets up with the grill. There is 2 different thicknesses there. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to raise this area up with the bead roll. So I'm going to come across here and bring this area up just a little bit on both corners. So this is going to be the first thing I'm going to do, is work on this section here. So this is going to be the first die that I'm going to be using. It's just a very shallow step die, and that's going to give me that raised section on the corner of that panel. Alright, so now that I got this corner done, I got both corners, this one and the one over on the other side, I'm going to come along here and I'm going to do the same thing here at the center. So I'm going to do the same break right along here so that this piece will sit flush on top of this piece, and then I'll trim off the excess. I've already got a mark here as far as how wide I want this overlap to be. So that's gonna be the next bend I'm gonna do in the bead roller. All right, so now that I got this detail done in the bead roller, I got the overlap bent up there, I was able to start working on the layout of my raised panels. So originally I wanted this to have recessed panels, but just because of the way everything's sitting, with this sitting on top of the grill support, if I had made these panels recessed, it would have sat all wonky. So these are going to be raised panels. I got one here, another little one here, same thing on the other side. There were also a couple of details that I needed to keep in consideration. One was this cutout here. this is actually where a latch comes through. And then on the other side, in the same location, it just so happens that there's a spring that's on the hood, and that landing point is right about here. I wanted to make sure that wasn't going to be landing on a raised section of the panel and thereby, you know, pressing that down. So I had to account for that spring landing, and that just happens to be in the same location as this hole here. So I was able to make this curved detail in the panel, and it happens to be the same on both sides. So now that I got the panels, or the raised pattern laid out, I can take these off and run them through the bead roller. After spending some time cleaning the surface, sanding it with some sanding discs, and red Scotch-Brite pads on my angle die grinder, I decided to paint the panels. And that was for a couple of reasons. So the first reason is that, like I said, this was made out of 22 gauge sheet metal that I had in the garage. So you can see that there are some rather deep scratches in the surface. I tried to take them out, but with it only being 22 gauge, I didn't want to sand it too far, so they just wouldn't buff out. So a coat of paint kind of helps with that. Also, there were some tool marks around some of the panels, or some of the raised areas left over from the dies. So the die here has some really sharp edges. So, and I've heard of other people having the similar issues where these sharp edges, I can't get this thing to focus, where these sharp edges left marks in the sheet metal. So that's going to be something I'm going to take care of later. I think I'm going to work on breaking some of these edges a little bit, just enough so that it helps alleviate any tool marks. Plus, there were a couple of spots where, well, this is my first time bead rolling and I missed the line, so I had to go back over an area. So there are some flaws, but overall, I'm pleased with this. Now, I know I probably should have done that raised detail with an offset die instead of the overlap die. I don't know what it's called. And I do have one on the way, but you know, new tool, got impatient, wanted to play. So it turned out the way it turned out. Overall, I'm really happy with the way it did. I mean, I got some practice, got to play with a new tool, got to learn something new, and that's kind of what all this is about, isn't it? So I'm sure I'll be doing more. I already have a couple ideas of some other projects I want to do with the bead roller. So that stuff will probably be coming. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. I mean, I know I did. But thanks for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe, hit the bell, and I'll see you on the next one.